Hillary Clinton, of course, is the original election denier. I'm sure you voted for her in 2016.
Well, she's not an election denier.
She absolutely was the OG election denier.
First of all, she came out before the sun had risen to concede the election to Trump.
And then spent the next 4 years saying he was illegitimate. He was an illegitimate president.
Okay, well, first of all, she didn't say he was an illegitimate.
Yes, she did.
You tell me exactly what she said.
She said those exact words repeatedly.
I believe he knows he's an illegitimate president.
Okay.
From original election denier Hillary Clinton to Bill Maher's mental block on Trump, we delve into the biased commentary of a comedian who wants the Democrats in power, as Megyn Kelly called him out. All right, everyone, we are going to be taking an even longer, harder, and frankly more disgusted look at a certain comedian who fancies himself a political sage. Yes, I'm still talking about Bill Maher. Now you won't know me. I'm not one for mincing words, and when I see hypocrisy and blatant bias masquerading as insightful commentary, my blood starts to boil like a French press that's been left for too long. And folks, Bill Maher, he's brewing an even more potent concoction of nonsense these days. We've seen him over the years, haven't we? The smug, self-proclaimed intellectual holding court on his HBO pedestal. He throws out these little barbs, these carefully crafted zingers, and his audience, still mostly nodding heads in agreement, eats it all up. But dig even deeper beneath the surface, and what do you find? A man utterly convinced of his own brilliance, often profoundly out of touch, and increasingly, it seems, driven by a deep-seated animus that completely blinds him to any perspective that deviates from his own. Look, I'm not saying the guy hasn't occasionally stumbled upon a halfway decent point. Even a stopped digital clock shows the right time twice a day. And sure, sometimes he might begrudgingly take a swipe at the woke excesses of the modern left. But let's be brutally honest, folks. It feels far less like a genuine critique from a concerned citizen and much more like a calculated maneuver to maintain a thin veneer of intellectual honesty while fundamentally and steadfastly aligning himself with the progressive agenda. He realizes that the excesses of the modern left might be stopping them from being elected, suggesting his critiques aren't rooted in principle, but in a desire for a specific political outcome he favors. He wants the Democrats in power and is a fan of Gavin Newsom, even pointing to Newsom's track record in California, a track record many of us find deeply concerning. Think long and hard about this. He gets a pat on the back from certain circles when he criticizes the far left, right? It gives him this flimsy guise of being reasonable, someone who's willing to call out supposed allies. But when it comes to conservatives, and especially the boogeyman that is Donald Trump, the gloves don't just come off. They're thrown into a wood chipper, and any semblance of fairness vanishes faster than conservative principles on a college campus. I see a man who has not only allowed his personal feelings to warp his political commentary, but has essentially welded it into a rigid, unyielding structure. It's like he's got this deeply ingrained, almost primal aversion to anyone who dares to stray even an inch from his liberal orthodoxy. And what's far worse, he doesn't appear to have even the slightest curiosity about genuinely understanding perspectives that exist outside of his tightly sealed ideological bubble. It's as if he's profoundly ignorant of stuff that he pretends to be passionate about. As one commentator astutely observed, I've heard more than just rumblings. I've heard accounts, even from individuals who've braved the hostile environment of his show, that attempting to engage in a sincere off-camera discussion with him about certain politically charged topics, most notably anything connected to Donald Trump, is akin to repeatedly slamming your head against a solid concrete wall. He has seemingly ossified his opinions into unshakable dogma, and factual evidence, logical reasoning, or well-supported arguments simply ricochet off his preconceived notions. It's this profound intellectual arrogance, this stubborn unwillingness to even entertain the possibility that his viewpoint might be flawed or incomplete, that I find utterly and completely infuriating. And let's delve deeper into this glaring issue of selective outrage, shall we? He'll vehemently rail against specific actions or statements on the right with the fiery passion of a biblical prophet condemning heresy. But when remarkably similar or even demonstrably worse actions or statements originate from the left, Suddenly, the airwaves are filled with deafening silence. Or perhaps we're treated to a weak, almost apologetic jab that's swiftly and conveniently dismissed. Where was this same level of intense scrutiny, this fiery indignation, when the thoroughly debunked Russia collusion narrative was relentlessly pushed by mainstream media and prominent figures on the left for years on end? Where was the insistent demand for accountability when demonstrably false narratives, eagerly embraced by his ideological brethren, were being irresponsibly disseminated across every major news outlet? It appears his critical, all-seeing eye has a remarkably narrow field of vision, almost exclusively focused in one direction, confirming his pre-existing biases. It's this blatant and unapologetic double standard that truly grinds my gears and gets under my skin like cheap coffee grounds. He so proudly presents himself as this unimpeachable bastion of reason and unwavering truth. But in stark reality, he functions as just another predictable partisan commentator, albeit one unfortunately amplified by a significantly larger platform, and adorned with the superficial trappings of intellectual sophistication. And here's the truly concerning part. A significant segment of his audience genuinely trusts him. They perceive him as this courageous, independent thinker, a brave soul unafraid to speak truth to power, regardless of which side of the political spectrum holds that power. But what happens when the very truth he's so confidently peddling is itself fundamentally skewed, heavily filtered through the distorting lens of his own deeply ingrained biases and unacknowledged prejudices? Our society is desperately in need of more rigorous critical thinking, not less. We need commentators who demonstrate a genuine willingness to engage thoughtfully with diverse viewpoints, to consistently challenge their own underlying assumptions, and to impartially hold everyone accountable for their words and actions, irrespective of their particular political affiliation. And frankly, the Bill Maher of today, in his current intellectually ossified and demonstrably biased iteration, is failing spectacularly and quite disappointingly on all of those absolutely crucial fronts. He has devolved into a caricature of his former self, utterly predictable in his outrage and remarkably consistent in his targets. You can practically set your watch by his tired and repetitive anti-conservative rants. It's the same worn-out talking points, the same lazy and unoriginal tropes simply repackaged with a thin veneer of comedic delivery. It's intellectually lazy, it's profoundly uninspired, and it does a grave disservice to the very real and critically important political conversations that we urgently need to be having in this country. So Bill Maher, if by some extraordinary circumstance you're actually tuning into this humble corner of the internet, here's my unvarnished and frankly long overdue message to you. Please, for the sake of genuine discourse, step down from your self-constructed ivory tower of intellectual superiority. Make a sincere effort to engage meaningfully with individuals who don't already reflexively agree with your every pronouncement. Dare to critically examine your own deeply entrenched beliefs and biases. Because right now, you're not offering insightful or even particularly entertaining commentary. You're simply adding significantly to the already overwhelming cacophony of partisan noise. And frankly, we've got more than enough of that toxic sludge already. All right, folks, that's my considerably expanded 2 cents for today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Are you also increasingly weary of the pervasive hypocrisy that pollutes so much of our political commentary? Do you, like me, believe that Bill Maher has long since lost his way, disappearing down a rabbit hole of his own biases? Let's engage in a real and honest conversation, a stark contrast to the echo chamber you're far more likely to encounter. On his show, until our next caffeinated discussion, keep thinking critically, stay grounded in truth, and for goodness sake, keep that coffee brewing strong.